Ladies and gentlemen, dzień dobry. Good morning. My name is George Kapandaidakis, Director of Industrial Policy in CEFIC, where I'm working for the last 12 years. And first of all, I would like to thank Thomas and Simon for the invitation to participate in your conference. Very well done, organized. Many thanks, and I would like to say also that the Polish Federation is one of the most active members of CEFIC, the European Chemical Industry Council, supporting always our outreach to the European Institution, Commission, Parliament, and the Council. The objective of my today's presentation is actually to provide you the latest data referring to the competitiveness of the European chemicals industry. It could be summarized in one sentence that in the last 15 years, the sector has become less competitive, and the situation is very challenging and sobering. 2 weeks ago, we had in Brussels the Competitiveness Council. You know that these are ministerial meetings where the ministers of industry and economy are participating. From Poland, Mr. Baranowski was there. But exceptionally, in this ministerial meeting, CEFIC and the European chemicals industry were invited to participate and provide their expert views on the state of the industry in Europe right now. This could be easily summarized in the slide that you are seeing here. It actually shows the development that we have seen in the last 4 years, from 2022 until end of 2025, regarding two important aspects: investments happening in the sector, together with closures that have been officially announced by member companies. We have heard a lot of strategies, visions, missions, but at the end, what matters in order a strategy to be effective is the number of investments. And as you can see from this slide, there is a big imbalance. We have seen in the last 4 years a large number of chemical plants being closed. We estimate that in this period, the announced capacity to be closed reaches the level of 37 million tons. This is around 9% of the installed chemical capacity in Europe, while the respective announced investments are extremely low and below, of course, the levels that are needed in order to have a successful transition of the industry. This should not be taken as a surprise. CEFIC had warned early enough and provided data. We published a study last year, last January, the well-known advance report, where at this time we are already indicating that we are losing our chemicals industry. At that time, the respective number that you saw before, 37 million tons, it was 11 million tons. Some people were arguing that this is a cyclical phenomenon, and chemical plants in Europe are closing because they are old and they cannot compete with the new ones which are in other regions of the world. This is not the case, obviously, and in this period of time that we examined in the advance report, you can see already here the comparison of Europe with other regions. We have lost 11 points between 2008 and 2023. On the other hand, and on the same period, China has gone up from 19% to 43+%, meaning that the respective increase is actually what we lost as Europe, as United States, and also as Japan. We analyzed competitiveness by 10 different factors in every detail with a lot of data. 6 of them are directly price-related, and 4 of them are non-price, a bit horizontal. You can see also the indexation here. And as you can see from the graph, Europe in this period of time has moved to the wrong place of competitiveness, while on the same time, you can see clearly US has gained in cost competitiveness, mainly because of the better energy and feedstock cost, while Japan and India has gained area, in particular for non-price competitiveness factor, and mainly due to the innovation that they are pushing through their policies. So as a result of this situation, we can see that in the European market, in the last 15, 16 years, the share of chemicals which are imported in the EU has increased from 20% to 31%. A few days ago, a president of a national chemical association has stated that Europe has become a market where others get rid of their own overcapacity. I would say that in most of the cases, this overcapacity is also subsidized heavily. You can see from the other side of the graph that our share as European chemicals exports to the world market has diminished from 7 to 5%. This is an overview comparison of Europe with the 6 other regions of the world. I have to mention that it has been done before the Gulf crisis and the war in Iran, so maybe what is stated here for the Gulf states could be revised, but you can see already that China, first of all, is greenish for all the indicators that we have studied. That's why the market share here, very high, 44% almost, while EU has a clear disadvantage for energy regulation, we know this, but also in other areas. This is how we compare with our peers in the world level. You know very well what is happening in the area of energy and regulation, but let me spend a few seconds on the factor that I showed before related with industrial policies applied in other regions of the world. This is what is happening with subsidies. The data are official, were published by OECD last week, and you can see that we cannot compete with China. They are providing 3 to 8 times publicly and officially, it could be even higher, compared with what is supported by EU for the manufacturing industry. A big difference and a big gap that it is difficult to compete. So CEFIC, with all this data coming in us, were warning early enough. So in January 2025, last January, we said that unless Europe takes horizontal measures to support industry, we are going to see the number of EU added value to be lost in the next 1 to 5 years to be around 8%. This was our initial estimation. Unfortunately, we are confirmed, but this happened on the short term, meaning in 1 year, we moved from around 2 to 3% to what I mentioned before, 9% of the installed capacity in Europe, 37 million tons. Where this happened, from our analysis, because we have created an extensive databases with around 180 cases across Europe with addresses, telephones, and names, most of them happen to Germany and the Netherlands. In these 2 countries, they correspond to around 45% of the closed capacity. Now, this is the analysis at member state level. What happened at the chemicals industry segments themselves? You can see that from the 4 main chemical segments, petrochemicals is the most affected. Around 14% of the capacity is due to be lost, followed by basic inorganics, polymers, and at less extent specialty chemicals. We asked these people why you are closing the chemical plants. What is the main reason of this situation? 50% of the answers coming from the experts, coming from the people who are operating the plants, was the energy cost. It was not the age of the chemical plant. Actually, it appeared at none of the response that we got back from the industry experts. Other reasons was low demand, we know this, cost of regulations, and so on. Unfortunately, the effect is not seen only on economic or activity level. There is a negative effect on employment, and according to the numbers released by the companies themselves, around 20,000 jobs have been affected or lost, and indirect jobs could be summarized at around 90,000 jobs across Europe. The numbers have been confirmed also with trade unions. So, all these are very serious, and at least it has to be recognized that it is taken up by the institutions. We can see the latest reports that came out from the European Commission in the context of the Critical Chemicals Alliance. What we reported as EFIC are now appearing as numbers in the respective reports of the Critical Chemicals Alliance. The same holds for the European Committee of the Regions, while, as I mentioned before, there were 2 council meetings dealing with the competitiveness of the chemical sector. Nobody can say now that they didn't know. They know very well. One of the initiatives that have been announced by the European Commission in order to tackle the situation for the whole European manufacturing, not only chemicals, is, as you know, the Industrial Accelerator Act. The main objectives is to strengthen the European industrial leadership in strategic sectors, create employment, and accelerate industrial decarbonization investments. If you see the proposal, it's still a proposal that has to be discussed and agreed with all institutions. There is also the ambition to increase the share of manufacturing in the EU GDP from 14%, which is currently the level, to 20% in 2035. This is an obligation that it is included in Article 2 of the regulation. I close my presentation with this slide, where I will explain you why this target is really important for us and why it is a big challenge for us to achieve. In the left side of the graph, you can see the evolution of the European GDP from 2020. All these are official Eurostat value, expressed in trillions of euros. And on the right side, marked with blue color, you have the respective share of manufacturing in European GDP. So more or less, it is around 14%. And the target, it is 20% in 2035. The gap is really big. It is the shaded area, which means that the absolute value of manufacturing should move from 2.4 trillion, 2.6 trillion euros now to around 4 trillion euros in less than 10 years. This is a big challenge. This means that manufacturing should grow much faster compared with the European GDP. And all stakeholders, the European institutions, industry, should try to contribute in order to achieve this. To achieve what? To achieve both industrialization together with the objective of decarbonization in Europe. I do hope that when I will return back in a few years in your conference, to be at a position to confirm that EU manufacturing share has been detached from 14% and is moving to the right direction. Thank you very much for your attention.